Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage here on MMA World. I am your host, as always, Jim Graham. Another edition of the show this week. First show where not as much to talk about in terms of like 8,000 fights going on in the landscape of mixed martial arts and combat sports. So this week on the show, we're obviously going to talk about last weekend's UFC fight, UFC Winnipeg, 4 fights on the main card. Also probably going to go over the undercard a little bit there, and a very exciting card and a lot of big things happening, especially within the welterweight division, as 2 big marquee matchups were featured in that division for the UFC. Also, Bellator 191 happened. Obviously, we have a lot of fans from the UK, so probably very invested in what went down there in Newcastle. I believe I have that correctly, in Newcastle, and that was Bellator 191. Also, there was a Bama undercard co-op show and stuff like that. Coming on the show this week, joining me is Ryan Cambridge. He is a part of the MMA World and MMA UK team. He's going to be filling in for my normal co-host, Kayla Beatty, who is sick today. So, Kayla, if you're watching already, feel better and hope to get you back next week. And also, wherever you may be, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, all that stuff coming up, obviously, this weekend as well. So I'm going to invite my co-host, Ryan Cambridge, on this week, and we're going to get talk here on MMA World as part of Beyond the Cage. And once again, thanks for joining us here on the broadcast once again this week. How's it going, Ryan?
Hello. Good, thank you.
Yeah, doing all right. Just telling everyone, obviously, what we're going to do on the show this week. UFC Winnipeg, Bellator 191, probably get into the Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor stuff as well, and Dana White and all that stuff as well. But how are you doing today, Ryan?
Yeah, very well, thank you. You?
So I want to start kind of right off the bat with the Floyd Mayweather stuff, and then kind of work our way into the 2 fights that happened, just because I think a lot of people are probably going to ask us these questions in the comments that I can already predict it. And that's fine. If you still have a comment or a question, write down in the box below, and we'll get to it as the show progresses. So obviously after the Conor McGregor fight, Floyd Mayweather said, maybe I'll get one back in the octagon. There was kind of a possible rematch. It just kind of seemed up in the air. No one really took it that serious. Now, all of a sudden, the longer Conor has been away from the sport, now we hear Floyd Mayweather talking, and now we hear Dana White saying, we're in talks. Now Floyd's saying, hey, I said it's something that could happen, not something that will or should happen. And now we're kind of getting conflicting reports between the two. My thinking is I don't see him doing it even for a huge payday. I don't think he wants, even though it's a different sport, him losing still, in his mind, affects his legacy. And obviously for a guy that went 50-0, he's very, very particular about that. So I don't see it happen regardless of the amount of money. But what do you think, Ryan?
We saw it with CM Punk. You can't do something and then try MMA. You just haven't got enough training to fight the guys at the UFC. If you're going to do it, get a few amateur fights under your belt, fight people with the same experience with you, and do it properly. Because these people that are in the UFC, extensive records, been fighting amateur, professional for years, they're just too good. Too good. And even if you're a world-class boxer, it's not MMA. You've got the wrestling, you've got the jiu-jitsu, you've got the Muay Thai, the kickboxing, and it's all so much different to what boxing is.
Yeah, especially when you already add in the fact that he's 40 years old. It's not like he's been doing some sort of different cross-training in another combat sport for years while also doing boxing, or he's a guy in the prime of his career that you could go, this guy is athletic enough to make that crossover. Maybe his athleticism could carry in through some of the deficiencies in the technical part of the game, but that's not the case. We're talking about the guy at the end of his athletic career. So this is not a guy that's going to take, as a guy who just started jiu-jitsu, this is not a guy who's just going to start in a beginner's jiu-jitsu class for a couple months and all of a sudden, be accurate at those styles of the game. It's just not going to happen.
No.
Now, we had Justin Jacobs say, same as Brock Lesnar, The difference is Brock Lesnar had a martial art that translates into mixed martial arts very well. The guy was a national champion wrestler at the University of Minnesota. And also you can make a case Brock Lesnar was maybe just past maybe his prime, like, or, slightly off of it, not way past it. So I think there's a big difference in that. And I think also in the heavyweight division, you can kind of get away with a lot of things, because when you're a freak human being like Brock Lesnar, where you're cutting weight to make 265 pounds, you can get away with not being as technically sound, because if you hit someone in the face with one of those fists, it's going to hurt a lot. It's a big difference than fighting someone at 145 pounds, where guys are just moving so fast. And if you don't have that speed, you're dead. It's a little different in the heavyweight division. That's why you see guys in the heavyweight division fight into their 40s, because you don't have to be as technically sound in the heavyweight division. It's just a different
animal. Right. Brock Lesnar's got that huge strength advantage, hasn't he? Where Floyd Mayweather hasn't got that strength advantage. I mean, the Conor McGregor fight was the first fight he'd finished in how many years?
Yeah, and also I think the highest weight he had fought at in a very long time too. I think at 150 pounds or 153 or wherever the heck it was.
Yeah, but he weighed in at about 145, didn't he?
Yeah, and he weighed in at 146 or 7 or something like that. Someone would probably double check the fact, but it was under 150 pounds. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
Now, when you hear these discussions, though, is this Dana White just trying to keep the UFC's name or Conor McGregor's name just relevant, and this is just Dana kind of spouting off things that he knows is not true, but to kind of keep some interest and intrigue by saying, yeah, we're in talks with Floyd Mayweather?
I think it might have been a trick by Floyd Mayweather. So, yeah, I'm interested. And then Dana White comes out saying, Floyd Mayweather's interested. And then Floyd goes, no, it's not true. That's never going to happen. Is it Floyd's trying to stay relevant still? I don't know. But I don't think Dana would lie about that. I think it might have been a publicity stunt from Mayweather to say, I'm interested, and as soon as it's come out, Dana White says he's interested, he shuts it down, to try and make the UFC, Dana, Conor and all that look silly.
I think what it is, I think he's lying to an extent. I think he's lying on how serious the discussions are. He may have had one discussion many months ago when this fight happened about possibly doing a fight in the UFC, and it was probably just something brief. There probably were no figures or multi-fight deals or anything like that. And so in Dana's mind, they had a discussion. But in Floyd's mind, it was him just talking with the man. And so I think that's where he may be lying, is he's making it sound like this is a serious deal. Like he's already sat down with Floyd and his agents and his managers and all that stuff. And the legal teams, has the paperwork drawn up. Like, you just got to sign. Like, I think he's making it seem like it's that level, but I don't think it is. I think they just had a brief discussion, and now he's blowing out of proportion. And now we see Floyd saying, hey, I just said that it's something I might do, not something I got signed.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I think Mayweather's got too much to lose to do that, and he would lose. There's no doubt about it. No matter who he fought in the featherweight, lightweight division, he would lose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you always say a puncher's chance, but I mean, if I looked over the whole featherweight current roster, I'd have to believe that even the lowest ranked guy would probably be Floyd Mayweather. And
I would put money that Joanna Jędrzejczyk would beat Floyd Mayweather in an MMA fight. Absolutely no question.
All right, I'm not going to get a debate about that, but I'll let the comments come in for you on that, Ryan. But all right, let's transition here to UFC Winnipeg. This past weekend, obviously from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Looking over let's start with the undercard real quick. I'm not going to go every single fight. I think it was 13 fights or whatever it was. But looking over the undercard, Ryan, what was a fight that you really liked, or a performance, or maybe a performance you didn't like? For me, I thought the performance I really enjoyed was the Julian Marquez win. That was an absolute brawl that he had with Stewart. And I think the back and forth nature, the fact that it looked like both guys had a chance to put each other away, and then to see Stewart kind of, I hate to say gas out, but it was also probably from accumulation of damage too, but kind of just break maybe a little bit, and that was just the opening that Julian needed to wrap up that front choke or guillotine choke to get the victory there. And I just thought that was a fantastic performance, especially for a guy, I think they've only had 2 or 3 guys now from that Contender Series make their UFC debut. So for him to, first of all, he was an underdog on that show against the guy he was fighting too, and he won that. Then I think he was an underdog in this. So I don't know. I thought it was a really great performance by a guy that I think does have a future in the sport. Just maybe has to keep his hands up a little more. But other than that, I thought he performed very well.
Yeah. Darren Stewart is tough. He from England, London, England, and in his fights, his nickname's the Dentist. Funnily enough, he's very, very tough. He's got big punching power. He's strong, so he's very good at wrestling. And I don't think there was a better fight for Marquez to start his UFC career, because it was Marquez fighting a fighter of a similar style. I suppose they might have similar experience, because Stewart hasn't been. I'm not sure Stewart's background actually, how many fights he's had prior to joining the UFC, but I think they'd be quite similar. So I think it was a very good fight for both of them to step up to the next level to fight the next guy, So it'll be interesting to see where he goes to from here. Now, the fight that I really enjoyed was the Jordan Mean-Eric Silva fight, the fight past prelim. You never know what you're going to get with Silva, do you? Silva can come out sometimes, have a great performance, and it's the same with Jordan Mean. And Jordan Mean showed very well in this fight, I think, against Eric Silva, who probably wasn't at his best. But I'd like to see a rematch, but I don't think it will happen. But I think it would be a good fight for Eric Silva, sort of try and claw back some dignity, I suppose, because he didn't fight well. And Jordan Ming just seemed like he was on another level. Great performance for Jordan, who's coming off the back of some, not so great performances.
Yeah, especially where I think his last fight was, if I'm not mistaken, was that fight in UFC 206. I have to double check that, but that's the last fight I can remember. And that was his comeback fight from his retirement, which is crazy to think because he's younger than me. I'm only 28 and he retired, which is crazy. But he came back. He had the fight against that guy was from Finland, right? The meat guy from Finland, I think. He had that good first round, and then you kind of saw fade in rounds 2 and 3. And in this fight, we saw a guy that the conditioning, you could tell there was a difference. Now that he's been back into the sport, you could really see that in this fight, because I think that was a big factor in why he won this fight, because he was still able to go out there grinding, and you could see Silva fading from trying to carry the weight of me and being on top of him. And I think for Eric Silva, a guy that I think is now actually 34, 35 years old, I think he's lost a few fights in a row here. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Eric Silva gets cut after this fight, because like you said, not only was it not a great performance, he has been losing lately, and the same guy that kind of burst on the scene with some great knockouts and great submissions, he's not that guy anymore. He's an older guy, and the book's been out on him. If you take him down, you can kind of break him. And the first fight we really saw that was the John Fitch fight, and after that, it was kind of like, well, if he fights a wrestler, he's just not going to get by him. That's kind of been the knock on him in his career, and he never was able to kind of get past that barrier of the wrestlers, and then that happens. I mean, the welterweight division is a very good division, but do you think he's going to be cut after this? Do you see him for maybe one more fight?
I don't know. Now you've said about him being cut, I agree with you. I didn't think of it beforehand, but I don't know. He's had some great fights in the UFC, so maybe they'll give him one. Yeah, if Eric Silva decides he's going to do like a retirement fight, maybe they'll give him one more. But
Yeah, and then I got to give a shout out to Nordi Talib. My goodness, what a kick knockout he unleashed there on Danny Roberts. As it was really the foot. It was kind of partially blocked. The foot hit the chin, but completely stunned him. And he did not disappoint going in for the kill there. And Roberts, after the fight, didn't know what happened. He thought he's like the fight didn't even start. He was all out of sorts, and that was a very impressive performance. Obviously, fighting in his home country once again for Talib, but I thought that was a very impressive knockout, especially like I said, considering it wasn't the shin and the fact it was partially blocked. That dude has some sick power to be able to do that, through gloves and stuff like that.
yeah, it's definitely an exciting one to watch at welterweight now. I mean, that fight. I wasn't pleased with that fight. I had Roberts. I like Roberts a lot. But after Roberts' fight with Mike Perry, and then he's, come back out, and I think, did he get a win in his last fight? Double check. Sure, he won one or two fights since that fight. He beat Bobby Nash.
Yeah, yep.
On the low card. So I was thinking, another win here against a tough Nordine, and he'll be going up. But it's the sport, ain't it? One shot can change the whole fight.
Absolutely. I want to backtrack just slightly. You kind of were talking about Darren Stewart's fight. He had 3 fights in the UFC before this. Overall, his record 7-3 with a no contest. And so now in the UFC, he's now 0-3 with that no contest. So talk about Eric Silva getting cut. There's actually probably a very good chance that Darren Stewart gets cut just because of the losses. I mean, they kind of, all right, he gets the no contest. They give him another fight. He loses to Francimar Bajozo. Not a horrible loss. Then he gets Carl Robertson, gets submitted in the first round. Now he gets Marquette. Yes, fight of the night, but still loses. So I think there's a very real chance he may get cut. And then speaking of Silva, he's now lost 4 out of his last 5 fights, and his only win in there comes over a guy I've never even heard of in Luan Chagas, which he submitted in the 3rd round. So, he has a loss to Talib in there too, but it's not like he lost to complete bums. I mean, those losses are to Magny, Taleb, Yancy Medeiros, and now Jordan Meehan. So not people I would consider horrible, but he's still losing to them though, Ryan. And like I said, he's I think he is 35. I just think that maybe they give him one more fight, but I'm just saying if they cut him, I feel like it would be justified.
Yeah. He couldn't have no complaints about being cut, that's for sure.
All right, let's get to the main card here, which kicked off in the light heavyweight division as Glover Teixeira took on Misha Cirkunov. And I'm going to be honest, I'm a little disappointed in Misha Cirkunov. Not the fact that I picked him to win a little bit, and not even so much that he lost, but I don't know, for a guy coming off that fight over Ozdemir, I expected a little more gusto. I expected a little more aggressiveness. I expected a guy that, was really going to go after it. Like, this was his opportunity. I mean, Glover Teixeira, even though ranked higher, is a guy definitely on the downside of his career. I think we all can agree with that. Yeah. And so I thought this young, hungry guy, and also, let's just be honest, the dude's a beast. I mean, he's a very put-together individual. I thought this was the fight for him to really make a name for himself in a division that's very shallow. And while, Glover won, he knocked him out, I thought that Misha just got, taken down, I thought, very easily. He got the back. He gave up the back very easily. I just felt like Glover was in almost like a training session. Like, he was able to do what he wanted to do with almost very little resistance and just pound him out there. And I thought for a guy that not only has some UFC experience, but I think has like 15 fights as a pro. Yeah, well, this was his 17th professional fight. You don't give up your back to a guy that's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and a guy that I dubbed when he first came in the UFC the Terminator. I don't know. It just felt like he was making a lot of rookie mistakes in there. And I'm not saying Glover didn't do anything great or, Glover did nothing to deserve the win, but I'm saying I thought Misha didn't perform very well and almost kind of gave Glover Teixeira that position. Like, here's my back. Just start hitting me in the face.
Yeah, exactly. I think Glover needed that win as well to stay relevant. But Glover Teixeira has just turned down a fight with Jimmy Manuwa.
He turned down a fight?
Yes. Last night, he turned the fight down.
We actually got a comment from George talking about that's the fight he wants to see next after this win.
Glover
like that.
Glover
Here's the thing about Glover. Glover's been around the game for a long time. He's had a shot at the championship. Obviously, that was against John Jones. John Jones now, for the foreseeable future, is out of the division. He feels that he should get a shot at Daniel Cormier. That's a fight that's never happened. But the thing is, he lost to Alexander Gustafsson not too long ago, and he lost pretty badly. I mean, he got absolutely worked in that fight. And Gustafsson, to me, probably should have gotten the shot over Ozdemir. I see why they gave Ozdemir the shot because that fight hasn't happened. That's fine. But if anybody's going to be next in line, it's Gustafsson.
Yeah, Gustafsson's injured. This is the problem Manowa's got. Ozdemir's fighting DC. Then you've got Gustafsson, who's injured. Then you've got Glover Teixeira, Manowa. So them two is the fight that makes sense. Below Manowa, you've got OSP and Corey Anderson, who Manowa knocked out in the first round, both fights. So it's no point making that fight again. The only fight I can see them making is Turkanov Manowa, if Glover don't fight. But that's not going to be a fight Manowa's happy with. Manowa wants to move up, not fight down, especially at his age, his experience.
Right.
I don't think he'll want to fight people lower than him, but he's just come off a loss. So you got to take what you get given, don't you?
So if Glover doesn't take Manowa, the only other fight I could see him taking would be OSP, right? That's, to me, the only other name that would make somewhat of a sense. And
but Manowa knocked him out in the first round. Manowa knocked OSP out in the first round 2 years ago at 204.
Right, and Glover already beat OSP in Nashville a year or two ago. I think he submitted him in the second or third round. I was at that fight, so I remember. But so that's what I mean. Like, you haven't fought Manowa yet. It's the one guy. That's
the fight that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's a fight fans would want to see. You got two big knockout guys. Glover has 18 or so knockouts in his career. Manowa has almost all his wins, I think, except one are by knockout. So. I don't know. I think you gotta give Glover some time. He just fought this fight. Give him some time. He may readjust and think, all right, that is the best fight for me to take. So I'm not gonna say that's completely not gonna happen. I say give that one some time.
Yeah, I think the UFC want to make that fight probably the main event in March. London fight night in March.
If they can't get Till and
Wonder Boy. Yeah.
I would say that's a good main event. Or obviously Michael Bisping's a factor to main event as well. With it possibly being his last fight. So those would be the three options to main event. Yeah. All right, we got a couple of comments I want to go over here. Ryan, let's see. We have one from Justin Jacob. He commented a couple times earlier, but he says, what's your view on Aaron Chalmers' future in the UFC? I don't know a lot about Mr. Chalmers. I'm not as familiar with the UK scene. I know I guess maybe you can shed more light on him, Ryan. He's 3-0 so far in his career, fighting out of the Bama organization. He's finished all three of his fights. All of them are under his longest fight's 209. He obviously is a guy that's putting away people quick. I mean, it's not a huge sample size. I can't attest to the quality of competition that he's putting away, but he is putting the guys away. And so what I would want to see him is tested against someone that's obviously going to push him that 15 minutes? Is he a guy that just simply can only go 5 minutes and he has to put you away? Or is it a guy that is just simply able to do this? That's the real test. And obviously, this is no disrespect to him, but kind of like I was telling you earlier with Eric Silva, when he faced one of these grinding wrestling guys, these guys that are not super interested in getting out of there early, the guys that are interested in doing 15 minutes of work, those are the type of guys I want to see him against. So as of right now, we haven't really seen that. And so that's, if he wants to be successful, especially in the UFC, as one thing he's going to have to learn to combat. And I'm not sure if he can do that yet. I just don't know. I mean, 3 fights, all of them less than 2 minutes. It's really hard to say how he's going to fare against some of those individuals. But I would say right now that's a pretty promising start. That's a pretty good start.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what we had. Another comment here. Thomas Lynch commented Floyd would never fight for that amount of money. Can you kind of elaborate on that, Thomas? I know it's a few minutes, but what do you mean like that? What do you mean, like the amount of money typical UFC fighters are getting, or like I guess expand on that a little more, because I think if the UFC is serious about having Floyd fight, which according to Dana White they are, they would make sure he gets paid somewhere in the 7-figure range, because it doesn't. Floyd Mayweather at this point in his career doesn't seem to get out of bed for less than 7 figures. So if they can't guarantee that, then a fight's not going to happen. So if you mean for less than that, then I agree. But I guess just expand. So I'm just trying to go off that. But you agree he probably wouldn't fight for less than 7 figures?
No. I highly doubt that you're going to see Mayweather walking out in a Reebok tracksuit. Let's just say that.
Well, if they do some, I don't know. I guess they may make some concessions for him or something to somehow weasel out of it, that he's not like a full-fledged fighter or something would happen to where he would probably be able to wear the money team stuff or co-branding or something. And so far the UFC in their history has not wanted to co-brand or co-market with anybody. That's one of the reasons why Fedor Emelianenko never came over here, is because M1 Global wanted to co-promote and co-brand with the UFC, and the UFC is like, we ain't about that life. We just want Fedor. And so that's one of the reasons why he never got signed, is because his management company, M1 Global, which obviously does do fights and other stuff, they wouldn't budge on that. Neither would the UFC. So I would say that would be a huge sticking point, money aside, even if they're like, we're going to give you $100 million, if he couldn't wear stuff like that, I think would be a huge sticking point, because that's one of the only reasons I see this fight getting done, is somehow them being able to co-brand with him.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's continue on with UFC Winnipeg. Again, keep on commenting, keep on the questions. Thank you, everybody that's watching and written in so far on the program. Next fight, I'm sad to say, my hometown guy here in Michigan, Mike Perry, did not get the job done against Santiago Ponzinibbio. I thought this was a very close fight. I think I would have gave Ponzinibbio the first round. I would have gave Mike Perry round 2. And then round 3, it was definitely Santiago Ponzinibbio. And at first I thought Ponzinibbio was being more timid than we usually see him in fights. But I think this was the first time that Ponzinibbio was coming across someone where he was probably like, this guy hits as hard, if not harder than me. I have to watch out. And so from that standpoint, it was really nice to see him change his strategy. He was working jab, low kick, and he would only engage when he saw fit to, whether Perry was up against the cage or he saw the opportunity for a quick 4-punch combo. And a lot of things were everything was set up off the jab and the leg kick. And I think it also helped for Ponzinibbio that he knew Mike Perry wasn't going to take him down. Mike Perry's not that type of guy. He wasn't going to change anything like that. So, and also we had Kayla, our normal co-host. Hey, Kayla, hope you're feeling better. But what do you think of his conditioning? It was an issue. I think it was an issue, Kayla, because it was coming on, as this fight was coming on into the third round, those big, powerful shots walking forward, it takes a lot of energy to do that. And I think just those little pitter-patter shots of Ponzinibbio were starting to build up too. You add in any of the wrestling exchanges, you could tell Perry was starting to feel exhausted as this fight went out, because like we were saying with that Ryan Chalmers guy, he's not used to fighting into the third round. He's used to getting out of there very quickly. So this fight going into the third round, I think he had to favor Ponzinibbio if this fight did go into the third round, which it did.
But Perry has done it before. Perry fought on the Fight Pass prelims at UFC 204 in Manchester against Danny Roberts, and that went to the third round. And right at the end of the third round, Mike Perry scored an absolute beautiful knockout. It was a great knockout. So he's been there before. He's had the cardio to do it before. I think was that Mike Perry's first fight in the UFC. I don't know
No,
if you've
he
seen
took
it.
on,
It was
he took
a
on
great fight.
Kim, I think, in his first fight in the UFC. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Hung Yu Lim, his training partner, was his first fight in the UFC. No, but in the Danny Perry fight, or the Danny Perry fight. Yeah, I guess it wasn't Danny Roberts against Mike Perry. The difference was Roberts wasn't doing what Ponzinibbio was doing. He wasn't wearing him down with those little shots. This was very much a fight that I feel like Mike Perry was in control in the Roberts fight. Whereas other fight, it was more 50-50. And I thought Ponzinibbio just had a really perfect strategy to fight Mike Perry. I think he really studied tape. And also I think showed an evolution, because I think a lot of people thought, oh, he was just going to brawl with Mike Perry, because we've seen that a lot. We've seen Ponzinibbio brawl people. We've seen beat people because he has that brawling style. But this is the first time we've really seen him kind of sit back and be technical with it. And he was able to do so against a very dangerous opponent. So I really applaud Ponzinibbio's performance, because I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, you can't go out and brawl. You can't go out and swing punches at Mike Perry. You can't. You will get knocked out. There's no doubt about it. Mike Perry's got great timing, great power. And I think if you go out swinging at Mike Perry, he will knock you out. So Santiago showed high fight IQ, definitely.
And what's that old saying? You never brawl. You box a brawler and you brawl a boxer. Yeah. That's what Ponzinibbio was doing. He was, boxing or being technical to the brawler. And for Mike Perry, obviously he wasn't ranked in the top 15, took on the number 10 guy. I think despite all that, I thought still overall he had a pretty solid performance. Obviously cardio is going to have to something he's work on. And really, I would like to see him employ, especially in the first round, throwing some change-ups. Not throwing just the home run 100% shots. Mixing a couple of change-ups in there. Because people know you got the power. But if you hit them with a couple of half-power shot, maybe get some of that weird false sense of security that, hey, maybe this Mike Perry guy doesn't hit as hard as people say he does. You get that false sense. And then in round 2, you hit them with those home runs, and they're like, whoa, where did these come from? And so I think not only would that help out with his conditioning, I just think that's a great strategy moving forward for him to add some change-up, add some half-power shots in there. And I think that's going to also help with the wrestling game, because he's going to be more, the half-power shots should in theory be quicker. So if they're quicker, your hands return back to your body quicker to stop the takedown. Because early on in fights, that's what people are really going to do. They're going to try to push that wrestling on you because they know they do not want to stand with you. So if I was Mike Perry, just that little adjustment, and I think actually he can evolve in his career. I would say we just saw Ponzinibbio evolve. Now we have to see if Mike Perry can do it.
Yeah. I think Mike Perry's definitely guilty of headhunting, isn't he? And he's looking for that knockout punch from the first bell to the end bell.
All right. Okay, continue.
No, sorry, I was finished.
All right, next fight. Now, this was a huge upset here in the co-main event as Josh Emmett was able to take out Ricardo Lamas. And this is a fight, obviously, Josh Emmett did miss weight. So I think it was a factor, but I'm not saying it was the ultimate factor of why Josh Emmett won. This is a guy who, obviously, moving down from 155 pounds, had already, I believe, fought one fight at 145 already, had looked pretty good in that featherweight debut. And obviously a guy coming in this fight was 13-1. So obviously a very skilled individual. It's just the fact he really hadn't had a chance to take on someone very highly skilled, as high as skilled as this, in the co-main event of a Fox card. But a guy obviously I had heard of. And I think a guy that can be a force to be reckoned with. And it was simply timing. He was able to time that. They said he practiced, with his team. Obviously, 2 guys of his team had already fought Ricardo Lamas and Danny Castillo and Chad Mendez. And I think that familiarity with them kind of helped get that timing, and I think he knew that if he could land with something solid, he could knock out Ricardo Lamas, and that's exactly what happened. He was able to counter with that left hook, and it landed flush, and there just was nothing Lamas could do to recover from that left hook, which was about as good as it gets, Ryan.
Yeah, it was a flat knockout. Lamas was seeing stars. There was no doubt about it. Emmett just caught him. Wasn't it off a hook as well? Didn't Lamas throw?
Yeah, the counter. It was that counter left. I think it was in a combo. It wasn't the first punch that Emmett threw, but it was the one that did the damage.
Yeah, and it was a shock. I mean, will Emmett go back up weight and get a higher ranked guy in his natural weight, or will he try again at 145 now where he's, got this win? I don't know. But you got to think he's got to get a top 5. You got to think he's got to get a top 15 guy again, regardless of what weight.
I got to double check, but I think somebody said Emmett moved up to number 5. He went from unranked to 5 in rankings. This is again the UFC rankings, not like world MMA rankings. So. But as we know, the rankings don't matter because they don't use them in any determination for a title shot. So while it's somewhat relevant, it's also not relevant because this was the guy's first fight taking on a guy inside the top 15 of the division. And yes, he did come out victorious, but he missed weight. So for Lamas, though, this is a huge step back. If he had won this fight, this would have been his 3rd victory in a row. Beating the likes of Jason Knight and Charles Oliveira before that. And even though Emmett wasn't ranked, I still think it would have been a solid victory for the veteran. And you can make a case that he could possibly get back in the title hunt. But now with this loss, especially a devastating knockout loss, he kind of gets pushed way back in line. And I'm not sure if Lamas at this stage of his career will be able to recover. I think it's going to be very hard for him to get back to that title.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be able to make another title run now. And it's not a huge selling point either, so it ain't like he'll have a big sort of fights to finish his career. But he doesn't really sell when he fights, does he, Lamas? He's in there, he's great, we respect him as a mixed martial artist, but he's not pulling any great pay-per-view numbers or anything like that, is he? That's for sure.
No, and he's definitely a guy that is more of a grinder. Yeah, he has some power. He's knocked out a few guys, but majority of his career is out wrestling people, out hustling people. That's really how he's made a name for himself and has gotten to this level. But I don't know. I think it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be really hard for him to get back into the title hunt. We have Kayla asking, did Lamas take a gamble here? I think he took a gamble, I think, more on the weight, more so than accepting the fight initially, because he was supposed to take on Jose Aldo. So when you look at would you rather fight Jose Aldo or would you rather fight Josh Emmett?
Yeah.
I think 10 out of 10 you're taking Josh Emmett. I just think you are, because Jose Aldo's a very tough cookie to crack. And obviously, as we mentioned, Kayla, this definitely affects him moving forward. And now Emmett all of a sudden goes from a guy no one's ever heard of, or very few people have heard of, to all of a sudden being maybe a few fights away from getting into the title mix himself. This was a huge jump, but he's got to make weight. If he can prove that he can make weight, he's shown that he is a guy that can knock out anyone in this division based off that fight there against Lamas.
Yeah. Looking at Lamas' record, it's very much like Michael Bisping. He has some good wins. He'll beat Cub Swanson, Eric Kosei, then he loses to Jose Aldo. Then he'll beat Juan Diaz, Dennis Bermudez, then he'll lose his fight to Chad Mendes, beat Diego Sanchez, lose to Max Holloway, beat Charles Oliveira, beat Jason Knight, and then this fight would have been against Aldo, which would have thought winning this would give him the next shot at Holloway, or Edgar, or Tager, whatever they're doing up there, and he loses again. It seems like he loses the fight before a title shot. The loss against Aldo at 169 was for the title. But since then, he always seems like he loses as you'd probably call it, the number one contender fight. Very much like Michael Bisping did, didn't he? A lot.
We got a question from Brad Judd coming in before we get to the main event. What's next for Ponzinibbio? Is about with Till a good move? That would be a fantastic fight if that could materialize. I'd love to see Ponzinibbio against Darren Till. I think that's a tremendous fight. Obviously, it was kind of put out there that he was going to fight Wonder Boy, and then that kind of backed away from that. So I'm not sure how serious in talks that still is happening. I think the fact it was already kind of put out there, whether it was too soon or not, I still think that's probably a fight that looks like it's going to be made. But if for some reason it doesn't, I think Ponzinibbio against Darren Till would be a fantastic fight for 2018.
Yeah, Till looks good.
What was that?
Till's looking good, isn't he?
Yeah. No, that would be a tremendous fight. All right, let's get to the main event here. Rafael dos Anjos against Robbie Lawler. And when I was watching this fight, Ryan, I came to the conclusion that I guess RDA is pretty good, right? I mean, and I say that kind of jokingly because I was talking with some friends after the fight, and it's nothing against RDA as a person. It's nothing against his talent or skill level or what he's accomplished. But for whatever reason, even with this victory, I just can't seem to get invested in RDA. And I don't know if you feel the same. And I don't know if there's other fans that feel the same with me. But I don't hate the guy. But I don't know. There's something about him. And this is not the only guy this ever happened to. It's just hard for me to, get behind him. And so that's why I guess it's maybe taken me so hard to kind of come around on him. I guess the other guy I can compare it to is Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman was a guy that I think is talented. I just could never really get behind. I guess RDA is kind of the next guy in that regard. So I guess does that sound any similar to you, or are you a fan of him now, or what's your take on RDA here?
I've always liked RDA. I thought the way he ran through the lightweight division to get the belt was incredible. I mean, but he had a very shaky start in the UFC, didn't he? Well, not a shaky start, but he'd had some wins, some losses. He's been in the UFC a lot longer than people think. But he went on that run where he beat everyone in the lightweight division, won the belt, then lost two fights. And then he was saying about how the weight cut was hard. Okay. So he moves up to 170 and he's doing it again. I actually wrote an article that got published today on the MMA UK website called dos Anjos doing it again. But yeah, he beat Tarek Safadine, decision. He beat Neil Magny, and then he beat the top guy in the welterweight division, Robbie Lawler. So I think he'll be next to fight Tyrone Woodley. I think he'll beat Tyrone Woodley.
I think that's probably the fight to make, is him against Tyrone Woodley. And like you said, that's I think maybe one of the things about Hafidus, and maybe that's what throws me off on him, is this guy was maybe an average or slightly above average fighter for about 5-6 years in the UFC. And typically, if you've been in the UFC that long, you haven't already either come close to a title shot or have gotten one, you typically don't get it. That's just how it works. I mean, I think Michael Bisping's probably the only really exception to that rule of being around 10 years and then finally get, it does. That's one guy and how many fighters over the years. It's just It doesn't happen if you don't get it within your first couple of years usually. And it seemed like Rafael dos Anjos was going to be that guy that just kind of, he does enough to win. And maybe he could stay around for a few years, but it never seemed like he was going to be that guy to leap out to championship contention. Then all of a sudden, obviously, he gets together with King's MMA and Rafael Cordero, and that coming out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, the guy just kind of shot up. And other than the loss to Tony Ferguson, and I guess the Eddie Alvarez loss, has been just about untouchable. And obviously, the Eddie Alvarez fight, hate to say is a complete fluke, because obviously Alvarez is a guy that can knock out anybody, but that's a fight I think RDA was winning and simply got a little cocky, came in too close, and got caught with one of those big wild bombs. I think that's a fight if you run back, I think RDA, like that, you say, 9 times out of 10. RDA does win that fight 9 times out of 10. That was the one time he did. And it obviously cost him the championship. And now at welterweight, I think that there was any doubt that, can this guy take the hits? Can this guy deal with bigger, stronger guys? I think he's answered that, especially in his last 2 fights, because he took on Neil Magny's arguably the biggest guy in the division at 6'2", a dude that walks around, 190 pounds or whatever. That's a monster of a man. He went through him like a knife through butter. And then he takes on Robbie Lawler, who's an extremely strong individual, a very tough guy to take down, is just an absolute savage. And he took him out because he can put up 343 thrown strikes in a 25-minute fight. That's ridiculous. You can put up that type of pace on someone, you're going to do well. I can tell you that. You can almost guarantee if you throw over 300 strikes in a fight, you're probably going to win. I think there's a pretty good odds if you throw that many strikes. And it still looked like he could go. That's the thing. It wasn't like he threw these 343 strikes coupled in with 7 takedown attempts and thought, this guy's slowing down. The only time it looked like he was slowing down was after he threw that 30-piece to 1 combo against Lawler there, in the second round, where somehow Lawler, just from being a savage, survived. Other than that, I mean, he put on an absolute, I think, mixed martial arts clinic in that cage last Saturday in Canada.
Yeah. You can't fault RDA. I think, like you said, since moving to King's MMA, he's gone up that extra level, which you don't see very often, do you? You see people moving around camps, and another good example is Gustafsson and Manoa. When Manoa went over to Sweden, what's the camp? All Stars? Is it All Stars?
Yes, Gustafsson and Manoa's now there, and Alir Latifi, and I think the Tamar brothers as well.
And since they've all got together, all their performances have improved a lot. I mean, as you said earlier, the Gustafsson against Glover fight, his punches were like sniper shots, weren't they? It was so clean, crisp. Every shot was a perfect distance where Gustafsson could hit Glover, but Glover couldn't hit Gustafsson. And it was just a perfect show of how when a camp gets together well, everyone starts performing better. AKA Rockhold, Cormier, Velasquez,
And I think like what you said there, Ryan, is very true. Gustafsson did a good job of not getting hit in the Glover fight, and I think you can say this was a case that speed that RDA brings, being a guy that you could say is a natural lightweight, that's something he can see. He can kind of see some of those big power shots, because even though Robbie Lawler threw 267 strikes, you would say, wow, that's pretty good for a guy that seemed to kind of get tired as this fight went on, but he only landed 137. So that means 130 shots were missed.
Yeah.
That's a good, from Robbie Lawler, you want to get hit as least as possible. And so from that standpoint, he did a very good job avoiding it. Now, let's not get it twisted. He did get tagged a few times. It wasn't like he got completely unscathed, but I think a lot of people were worried, especially when you consider the Alvarez fight. Obviously, he had got knocked out by Jeremy Stevens very violently early in his career. I think a lot of people, that was another knock on Lizzie. Could he take the hits? Not necessarily, the strength and the grappling exchanges, but could he deal with the hits? I think this fight proved he can take a hit. I think if there was any question about it, because like I said, he did still get hit 137 times, and the only time it looked like he was kind of out was from him throwing 30 strikes in a row. It was because of his own thing, not because of really anything Robbie Lawler did in this fight.
Yeah, that is, too true. Too true.
We got another question from Brad John. He says, next for Alvarez is Lawler. Are you confused between Eddie Alvarez and Robbie Lawler, or what? I think you might be confused on the opponent. I don't see Eddie Alvarez taking on Robbie Lawler, unless you're referring to another Alvarez I'm not familiar with. What's next for Lawler? Probably going to take a few months off, because I'm not saying he's done in his career, but now this is 2 out of 3 fights that he's lost. Obviously, it's just the nature of his fighting style. He just gets into wars. And even though he didn't dish as much out in this war as some of the other ones against Hendricks and Condit and Mel Manhoef and all that, he took a lot of hits in this fight. This is not a fight that you just easily bounce back from. And for a guy that I believe is now, let me double check my records here. Let's see, he was born in 1982, so that's 7 years older than me. So this is a guy that's 35 years old. This is not a spring chicken anymore. And so I'm not saying he should retire, but I'm saying I don't think we see Robbie Lawler fight again until the summer. At least he shouldn't be fighting until the summer. I'll put it that way. And so I'm not sure at that time who he'll match up with timing-wise, but I'm looking probably for a June, July return for Robbie Lawler. I think that would be the best thing for him if he really wants to continue fighting. Even if it's not for the championship, I think, because just people love him and that's what he loves to do. But I would consider about a 6-month break here for him.
Tell you what could be the fight to make, Lawler v. Till.
Yeah. Obviously, I'd love to see a rematch with Carlos Condit. I mean, we probably should have got that following 195, and we didn't get it. Condit's fighting in December. You figure 6 months for him after the fight here, coming up with Magny. I think that might time out well, Condit against Lawler, too. And I think that's an easy pay-per-view co-main event or a main event on a fight night or a Fox card in its own right.
Yeah, that fight makes more sense. Like you said it. Yeah, Lawler, Condit. Yeah, if Condit decides to do it again, because I don't think Condit really enjoys fighting, does he?
I think he took a break too, and I think this is kind of we'll see where he's at too. Obviously, a guy that's been in some wars himself, so we'll see what Carlos Condit comes out here against Neil Magny. But I'm excited, a guy that I've always loved watching. And as far as the title picture, like I said, I think, like you said, I think it is RDA Tyron. I know Colby Covington's trying to kind of get in there as well, but I'll put it this way. Did Colby Covington dominate Damian Maia? Yes. I'm not taking that away from the kid. But when you look at Colby's performance against Damian, if you look at kind of number one contender, and then you throw in RDA against Robbie, I think RDA had the more impressive performance. Now, obviously, he had the added bonus of having the 2 extra rounds, and that's not Colby's fault. But I just think that's a more impressive performance. And so that's why I would have RDA, I hate to say leapfrog, but I would say that's why I would see him get the shot over Colby Covington. And maybe that's when we see Covington take on a Wonder Boy, a Darren Till, even Lawler off a loss, I still think is a good fight. A Carlos, somebody like that. I think even a Ponzinibbio. So I think Colby probably gets the one more fight, and I think RDA takes on Tyron. I think that's what should happen. I don't know if that's what will happen. I'll put it that way.
I'd like to see Covington put on 100 pounds and go and fight Fabricio Verdum.
Maybe he can fight on that weird no rules gender wars thing that they're doing out there in Russia. Yeah. It seems like they'll legalize anything, so maybe they'll legalize, a 180-pound dude against the 240-pound guy. Why not, right? If they're going to have women fight men, why not, a 60-pound advantage?
Exactly.
Actually, what they should do is they should put a boomerang in the center of the cage, and they have to fight. Whoever gets the boomerang first wins the fight. Maybe they can that. All right, we had a question from Matt. What's next for Conor? I think I get asked this every week. This is no offense to you, Matt, but he's going to be at home spending money. That's what's next for him. That's what he's doing, man. He's living life. He's spending the cheese. He's buying the cars. He's going out on date nights with models. That's what he's doing, man. He's just living life right now. That's what's next for him. Continue to spend money. That's what I see in his foreseeable future. What about you, Ryan?
As far as the fight's concerned, you never know, do you? You never know who is going to fight him next. Really, it should be Tony Ferguson.
Right. That's what should happen. But it's not. I don't think it will happen.
There's the Nate Diaz trilogy. and who knows that there might be someone new starting next year come out who turns into be a massive star, knocks up a few wins. It could be late next year. Connor fights this new upcoming person who does exactly what he says, and I don't think you know who Connor's going to fight until it's announced. And
Yeah, there's
whoever
too
it is,
much.
it's going to have
There's
to be
too
for a
much
lot of money.
stuff out there. There's too much noise for me to really make an accurate prediction, and that's why I say that kind of jokingly, but I say that very serious, Matt. Where I legitimately think that's what he's doing. I can't put a timetable on it because it just doesn't seem like there is a timetable. It'd be nice to say he's going to return in 2018, but all indications we get is that he's not. So the only logical thing I could think of is that he's going to just continue to spend money and have fun in his life. That's the only thing I can really say for sure, is that's the only thing that he's doing. Um, will he be stripped of his belt? I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's been any indication of that either. Again, that's what should happen, but will it happen? I don't know. I think by this summer, if a decision hasn't been made already, I think they might be forced into division. But again, are people going to revolt enough? Are they going to stop buying UFC enough and pay-per-views and stop going to events enough for them to really care enough to do it? That's what I mean. It's like, is it going to really affect them financially to do it? And that's another thing you got to throw in, especially with a guy like Dana White, as a very stubborn and individual. He's the guy that doesn't always think logical. He's the guy that sometimes thinks emotional, and he gets a hot head. And sometimes that's great, but other times it's not so great. And this is one of those times.
Dana White is just an impulsive fan, isn't he? Dana White is a fan and he's impulsive and he gets these ideas and he's like, yes, that's a brilliant idea. We're going to do this. And then he probably goes back half hour later and thinks, oh, God, what have I said?
Right.
And then has to release a statement and say, no, this ain't going to happen. But I just think that Dana's very impulsive. I think he's brilliant. I wouldn't want to see anyone else as the president of the UFC. Never.
All right, real quickly before we end the show here, I got to talk a little bit about Bellator 191. Obviously, happened in England this time. And looking over this card, I thought it was kind of a ho-hum card. I can't speak to the BAMMA portions. We didn't get that shown here in the United States. So for those of you that saw the BAMMA portion, maybe that was fire. I don't know if it is. Let me know. But from what we saw from the Bellator portion, we saw Jeremy Peatley get a split decision over Lewis Monarch. And we saw the Phil DeFries knock out James Thompson. James Thompson should probably retire. When he came out, I was kind of like, this guy's still fighting? I think that's probably a guy that should retire. He's just I think he's pretty much done. Then we saw Muhammad Yahya defeat Ash Griffiths, which I thought was a very impressive performance with that first round TKO. And then the two big attractions, the Letourneau and McDonald, I thought were kind of ho-hum. I thought Valerie Letourneau, yeah, she did enough to win, but if that's the type of performance she puts together against current champion Ilima-Lei Macfarlane, I think Macfarlane smashes her. You can't fight that way against her. I thought she just did enough to win. And for Kate Jackson, a girl I thought was going to go in there, be very competitive, fighting on home soil against Letourneau, I think she was kind of maybe the lights, the star. I don't know. I think she seemed nervous, and I thought she kind of had a poor performance. I was expecting a lot more from her. And for a fight where Letourneau, I didn't think had nearly close to the best performance we've seen from her and in any organization, thought this was a chance to get an upset like that. And I think she kind of missed it there. I think she missed a big opportunity to make a name for herself and possibly get a title shot coupled. But what do you think, Ryan?
I think Valerie's now at the right weight because before she was fighting at strawweight, wasn't she, in the UFC?
Yes, that's correct.
Lost to Joanne Calderwood, which is there's nothing to be ashamed of that. Joanne Calderwood's one of the top legit strikers in that division. But moving to Bellator, got this fight. The problem is for Valerie, I think, is she has to take a few more fights with Bellator, get some more experience before she gets a title shot. But with her moving over from the UFC, there's a big selling point. There's a big attraction. Are they going to throw her in too soon for champion? Who knows? I don't think they should. I don't think she should accept the title fight yet. But it's easy for us to sit here and say she's not ready when her and her team are probably saying, we want that fight.
Because they very easily could have gave her a title fight for her first fight. They very easily could have had Letourneau fight McFarland for the title upon her debut, like many other big-name signees, and they didn't. And obviously, I think that was a good call because, like I said, if she would have fought that way against McFarland, she would have got smashed. I firmly believe that. So she's going to really have to step up her game. And so in my mind, she probably would, but it's not like Bellator. I think what hurt also in favor, I think if Ovinchenko would have won a few weeks ago in Italy, I think there would have been a strong case for her fighting McFarland, and you could have had Letourneau no matter what get another fight. But now that Ovinchenko lost, it kind of makes that list very short of who is worthy of fighting Illumier. And so Letourneau may get that just because of the name factor. And the fact is, so far, Illumier has beaten everybody. So I think she may get that push sooner than she probably should just because of that fact.
Yeah, more than likely. There's not much depth in the division yet, is there?
I mean, they got some good fighters, but they're still building it out. And it's going to hurt now. See, the whole thing was when the reason they put together 145 and 125 for the women's was because the UFC didn't have it. Now the UFC has the 125 division, and so now that marketplace for those top flight female fighters is now split, and so that's going to hurt. That might hurt Bellator, whereas initially it wasn't. It looked like a genius idea. Now it's not as great of an idea. So now they're once again competing for talent, and more times than not, the UFC probably wins that battle.
Yeah, UFC every time. Bellator building up a good fight base. They've got good fighters in Bellator now, but they're not at the UFC's level. Saying that, their welterweight division is stacked. Bellator's welterweight division is brilliant. But I still don't. I think if Bellator and UFC had events on the same night, I think more people would tune into a UFC fight night than a Bellator pay-per-view.
Looking at the main event here before we end, Michael McDonald against Peter, I think they were saying Leger, because he's French. I think that's how they were pronouncing it. I don't think it was as bad as Letourneau's performance. And obviously you got to factor in McDonald broke his hand in the second round. I'm sure they had a major factor in this fight, especially in round 3. Yeah, he got the win. He beat the guy he was supposed to beat, obviously, but got his hand hurt. And I feel really bad for Michael McDonald because this is a guy who, when he had that long layoff not that long ago, it's because it was a series of hand injuries. So when I heard he broke his hand again, I was like, oh, man, like this is what this guy was just overcoming. And so for it to happen again, it's a disappointment. And I hope it doesn't keep him out for another 2 years. I really don't. And because I would like to see him against Caldwell and Dantes and, Joe Warren and some of these guys at 135 because I think he is an extremely talented individual. And that was really the takeaway from this fight was just kind of disappointing because this injury could hamper him more than other people just because he's had that injury. Yeah, Kayla counted the x-ray. That's what I mean. This guy's had a series of hand injuries, so I really hope a speedy recovery for him because he's just such a nice guy. I've interviewed him before, and just for that injury to happen again is just super unfortunate.
Yeah, I think we also saw a much more wary Michael McDonald as well. In his last fight, he got destroyed by John Lineker. And I don't think Michael McDonald's ever been hit like that before.
He's never seen punches as fast before, I can guarantee you that.
Yeah. So, after being knocked out by John Lineker, I think McDonald had a much more reserved game plan for this fight. To try and, go out there, win the fight, but, avoid getting knocked out. Because after a loss like that to John Lineker, I think you're going to be wary, aren't you? You're going to be wary because Lineker just absolutely... but he has fought Renan Barao, Faber, Brad Pickett. So he's fought class strikers before. But I don't think no one that hits as hard as John Lineker.
Yeah, the speed... obviously being a guy that, tried to fight at flyweight for quite a while. Just his speed is what really separates him from a lot of those other bantamweights, and I don't think he was ready for it. A lot of people haven't been ready for it, so that's not like a huge knock on Michael McDonald, but that's something that he's probably never going to have to face in his career again, a guy that moves that fast. Because I think Eduardo Dantas is fast, but I don't know if he's that fast. That may be the closest guy he may see going to that. So, because I think he is a force. He's a guy that's a pretty well-rounded individual. I think he's just starting to kind of enter his prime, and so for having this hand injury, it sucks for him. It sucks for Bellator because obviously, they're banking on him being a potential star for them, and right now. It's not working out, but we'll see. Hopefully he can come back this summer. He can fight Caldwell or Dantes or even Joe Warren. I think would be a fantastic fight as well. So we'll see how that matures. But for Bellator's last card of the year, I thought I don't know how fans in your neck of the woods there, Ryan, in the UK felt about it, but I thought it was a little underwhelming. Considering obviously what the UFC's, and I know they're trying to make a big deal for the new network, the Paramount Network launching the Douglas Lima and the Rory McDonald and the Chael Sonnen. I understand that's going to be a big event, but I don't know. It kind of seems like they just kind of went quietly into ending 2017. I would have liked, and especially for somewhere they don't go that often. They don't go to England that often. I think this is only their second or third time in the country. I would have liked to see a little bigger splash down there, whether that was a title fight or a big marquee fight, a Paul Daly, oh gosh, why am I forgetting his name here? A Michael Page, somebody to kind of make a splash. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we've been unfortunate with some of the events we've had over here from BAMA and the UFC. We don't really get huge fights. But UFC 204, that was a great event. With some big names on the card. But if that was in America, that card would have been a fight night. If you look at that card,
Right.
It was just because Bisping and Henderson were fighting on it that it was a 204.
Right.
So, I think it would be nice for the English, United Kingdom fans to have a solid card, because I stay up till 6 o'clock in the morning most Saturdays watching the UFC.
Right.
And they come over here to do an event, and it just seems to be quite underwhelming. But
yeah, I think that was an underwhelming event. I'm also that James Gallagher's out there. I mean, there are guys, Linton Vassell. They have guys I think they could have put on the card to make it more, because they have Letourneau, obviously Canadian. Michael McDonald's from California. It's not, I think they could have done a little more to kind of flare up the event a little bit. And Val Letourneau, Michael McDonald, they're good fighters. They used to be in the UFC, but like realistically, if you're a fan, let's say you've never been to a big time mixed martial arts event, which I would say in the UK is probably pretty good, right? I'd say there's pretty good odds. And you see, Bellator's coming. It's near me. I live near Newcastle. And you kind of see that, you're kind of like, really? You probably go because it doesn't come often, but you're kind of like, really? This is what they give us?
This is what they're giving us? Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, but maybe it'll change. Maybe that, because they've had bigger events, obviously in London, so maybe that's their justification. But I think if it wasn't the final fight in the year, I probably wouldn't make this big a deal about it. But the fact is, this was their final fight in the year. This is the last time we'll see Bellator for about a month, and also kind of the last event on Spike. You think they kind of would have made that somewhat of a big deal, and it just kind of feel like that was a missed opportunity by Bellator.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
All right. Anything else you want to end the show with here, Ryan?
No. Just thank you for having me on. It's been fun.
No problem. He is Ryan Cambridge. Thanks for coming on. And obviously look for his work coming up on MMA UK and MMA World as well. So thanks for joining me this afternoon, Ryan.
Thank you very much.
All right. Once again, that was Ryan Cambridge, everybody. Thanks for joining me on the broadcast here this afternoon. Thanks, everybody, for tuned in. We're going to be back next week. Hopefully, Kayla will feel better. We'll get her back on the broadcast. If not, we'll find someone else. But I'll be here Regardless, again, thanks for everybody watching. This is Beyond the Cage on the MMA World Facebook page. I'm your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Please like and share the post and like MMA World on Facebook. Until next week, thanks for watching another edition of Beyond the Cage right here on MMA World.